Across history, moments of great change have called for great leadership. Today, we stand at one of those moments. Generative AI is reshaping our economies, our societies, and our ways of life. And the Caribbean must lead with wisdom, courage, and vision. Over the years, we have been guided by giants. Our global ambassador, Professor Bob Garrett, Professor Mervyn King, Professor Charlotte Villay, Nandi Mandela, and Professor John Elkington. As generative AI reshapes our world, governance must not just adapt, it must lead. We are thrilled to welcome Fatima Abu Salem of the University of Beirut, our keynote speaker, as we feature a week of powerful conversations, fresh ideas, and collective action. Over 5 days, more than 50 Caribbean leaders will join forces to adapt, to change, and to shape it. To build governance that is ethical, resilient, and deeply human. We thank our sponsors for standing with us on this journey. Governance Week 2025, Governance in the Age of Generative AI. Thank you so much, Quantral, and good morning, everyone. This is Governance Live coming to you from lovely Guyana. We are on this trade mission with the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association. Later today, we leave for Suriname, which is the second leg of this journey. And therefore, we have had to adjust the time for today's Governance Live. And so we are coming early to you this morning. As those of you who are following this live stream may know by now, Governance Live is our precursor to Governance Week, which this year is happening from June 22nd to June 27th. It's really a fabulous week. We have amazing speakers from around the Caribbean region who will be participating as we discuss our theme, Governance in the Age of Generative AI, as you saw from our opening video. And as we get started, I want to make sure and say a very special thank you to our sponsors as well. So we have returning as our platinum sponsor for Governance Week this year, Massey Limited from Trinidad and Tobago. We are so appreciative to Massey for their continued support. We have two silver sponsors, Trident Trust from the British Virgin Islands and First Citizens Bank from Trinidad and Tobago. And this year, we welcome 6 bronze sponsors, 5 of whom are from Trinidad and Tobago. So returning sponsors, we have Republic Bank from Trinidad and Tobago, PwC Trinidad and Tobago, Angostura from Trinidad and Tobago, and 2 new sponsors from Trinidad and Tobago, B-Mobile from TSTT, and Infosys, which provides links services in Trinidad and Tobago. And returning as a bronze sponsor with us again is G.A. Rowe and Sons from Belize. So we are really very appreciative of the support that we get, because most of you know we do a lot of work here at the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute. We run over 52 events for the year, because our purpose is to help improve governance practices. And that requires us being able to engage the conversation with persons across the region, because there's no one way to do proper governance. It requires a lot of expertise. It requires discussions around what's happening in the environment, who are the people involved, what is the framework that works best for this organization. And so today we have a guest who we know has amazing experience. She's a first timer here with us at CCGI, and it is a great pleasure for me to welcome her this morning. So Yana Samuels is joining us from Jamaica. Yana is she's not just the corporate secretary, I have to share, she's the managing counsel for Wray Nephew Limited, which she says is a Campari group member out in Jamaica. So Yana, first of all, welcome to Governance Live.
Thank you so much for having me, Kamla. I'm so excited as a first-time speaker. Recently entering into correspondence with you, really coming to understand what the Caribbean Corporate Governance Institute does, has done, stands for. It's really a pleasure to be a part of this.
Thank you so much, Yana. And we must thank Rochelle Cameron for introducing
Absolutely.
us. Yes, Rochelle, has been a member with us. She's been a facilitator for workshop for us, several times a panelist. Yana is going to be a panelist for us for Governance Week 2025. But Yana, let's start with learning a little bit about your company. J. Wray and Nephew. It's such an unusual name. What do you guys do?
So Wray Nephew Limited is the largest producer and distributor of fine wines and spirits in Jamaica. We, in fact, celebrate 200 years this year. So the company was born out of a small tavern owned by Charles James Ward. And the nephew comes from him bringing his nephew from the United Kingdom to join him in his entrepreneurial pursuits. And so that business was started in 1825. And through successive acquisition, it was then acquired by an entity that subsequently acquired Appleton Estate. Now, if anybody knows Appleton Estate rum, then you know fine premium rum. It's a global name, it's a household name in terms of Caribbean rum, and it is certainly by our accounts the finest Jamaica rum.
Wow. Okay. So, well, I guess that tells you I'm not much of a drinker. So I would have recognized the name. So, okay. So we are talking to someone who is working with a company that's over 200 years old. So
Yes,
clearly one that understands long-term focus and
absolutely.
sustainability. So we are facing very, very unusual times, however, Yana. The world has never been as complicated, I think, as it is today.
Absolutely.
Yes, there's so many geopolitical changes that's creating a lot of excitement, I would say, in the whole world. But there's also this evolving artificial intelligence
Yes.
that is impacting organizations. So as we look at governance in this age of generative AI, it's evolving. So there's a lot that we don't know. So let's talk a little bit about governance in general. I know that your responsibility is not just for Jamaica, but the Caribbean region and part of Central America.
Yes.
How are you seeing the governance practices in these regions? Are they open and excited about the use of AI and the future? What are some of the areas of concerns and what are the risks that these organizations are looking at?
Excellent points. Where I will start, I think it's important to understand certainly what the Wray Nephew ethos is, because it certainly guides how we go into the market. And it ensures also that the way in which we deploy our activities, bearing in mind data privacy issues and in the use of AI, the fact that we do that within the framework that we're mandated to work in, given that we are an in-market company of an Italian-based business. So as you indicated before, Wray Nephew Limited is a part of the Campari Group, and the Campari Group is headquartered in Italy. And so our approach to AI and the guidelines we have around the use of AI and how it is that we should be interfacing with AI as it is used by third parties, vendors, distributors, clients of ours, is governed by the guidelines that we have. And so being based in Italy, being a part of the EU, we are guided by the principles that govern how it is that EU is deployed or that AI is deployed in the EU. And so we have had AI, actually the use of generative AI guidelines since February 2024. And we've in fact rolled that out not only within the organization, but it governs and it forms terms and conditions of our third-party contracts. How we do our business within the Caribbean and in Central America, we don't have in-market companies in all of the markets that we conduct our business in. We are hubbed in Jamaica. And so we work through distributors, third-party distributors, often 2 to 3, depending on the market, depending on the country. And so we are very much integrated in, and we certainly stand to suffer any blowback from active and irresponsible use by these third parties, because they are in effect our agents in these markets. And so given that the guidelines that we have are very much designed on what are proactive frameworks that have been deployed in the market. So our guidelines were crafted on the EU AI Act when it was a draft, when it was in draft. Yeah. It's crafted on the OECD AI principles that have been in place since 2019. And if you look at, and it has certainly recently undergone iterative changes, given recent standards coming out, ISO standards on AI risk management frameworks and assessments. And so we're in a constant state of evolution. And as we update those are deployed to our third parties. So they understand certainly what, if you do business with Wray Nephew, and by extension, Campari, the guidelines by which you need to be guided in the execution of your work. But certainly, if you look broader to the regulatory landscape, again, being in an emerging market, and certainly working with emerging markets, we are not yet at the stage of having our own AI legislation. And so we are very much guided by, and we look to the more developed markets in terms of how they deploy AI and the principles around the deployment of AI. And so we just ensure that we stick strictly to those, principles like fairness and non-discrimination, transparency in AI. So making it very clear when AI has been deployed in the execution of your services and how, and ensuring that you can explain how it is used. And if you can't, then you ought not to be using it or relying on the information that it provides. But what it also helps us to do, certainly in the market, is it helps us to be timely with the gathering of information, the observation of trends. The fact is we are a fast-moving consumer goods business. And so consumer insight, consumer trends, industry changes, because it's also a niche industry, the spirits industry, so that's even a subset of FMCG. So needing to, in real time, track consumer trends, consumer insight, but ensuring that the information that you're tracking is accurate, because certainly with AI, the output is driven by the integrity of the input. And in a market where there is fragmentation in terms of information sources, statistics and things of that nature, we just need to make very sure that how we're deploying AI, there is integrity behind it.
This is such excellent information, Yana, because we have had some discussions around this whole evolution of artificial intelligence. In fact, we have an international learning network where we invite global experts to talk about evolving areas. And we focused on AI. And in that conversation, there was a lot of emphasis on the need to set up guardrails. Yes. But what I'm hearing from you is that there are existing guardrails that would have been developed, whether it's through the EU or ISO standards that's looking at artificial intelligence, that your company already is looking at, has embraced, and is deploying through your third parties. It means, therefore, that there are a lot of companies within the Caribbean region who do business with you, who are already in that habit of working through certain guidelines in how they use artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. And certainly the multinationals. We know that the Caribbean and Central America, foreign direct investment is a key source of revenue, of economic growth here. So given that they set up in-market companies and there are opportunities for learning, but there's also demonstration of operating within this environment, doesn't mean that compliance cannot also happen.
Right. And have you found that there's a lot of openness for persons to train and learn this area? What is the sense from directors in particular? Because I know the compliance professionals who work with these organizations, this is the norm for them. But are you finding that directors are as aware and open to the need to move in this direction?
When I get this question, it's always my answer. I always have to be careful about the answer that certainly I have observed, and I think that it's important to mention, the demographic of the board, I have found, very much is correlated to the culture of embracing technology, emerging technologies, and utilizing that in how the board operates and makes decisions. So not to be ageist, but I have found that where the demographic of your board, it's constituted by the older generation, you find that there is less of a willingness to embrace AI, and certainly where there is a willingness to embrace it, there is a interest, or certainly wanting to limit how it is deployed. So it is more so seen as a efficiency tool, which it is, but not necessarily embraced as a strategic tool, as a tool that you can use to be predictive, because AI can give you predictive analysis on what they call what if scenarios. What if we were to launch this product or this service in this market, using your understanding of consumer insight, how should we go forward? When you come to a board meeting, you're coming at the end of a month, or certainly, the beginning of the month, but you're looking retroactively at what it is that the business has done over the past period, and analyzing that. But you're analyzing it kind of static, because you're analyzing it in the environment of how it is that you have previously, as your business, operated, and what are the trends you're seeing from that. But it is also important to not only look historically to see your trends internally, but how are your trends tracking against your competitors? How are your trends tracking against not even your direct competitors, but your indirect competitors, emerging competitors in your market? How does it track against best practices, depending on the matter of discussion? So I have found where you have a board that is a little bit more mixed across your generations, one, you find that it in fact makes its way onto the agenda. One of the big gaps I'm seeing is that boards are not even really putting AI, and if people think that AI is kind of far down the spectrum, privacy, because data privacy issues really are your gateway to discussing generally the use and deployment of technology and the risks associated with that in your business. So the embracing of AI, I have found, is across the board slow. But certainly the demographic of your board is also a direct contributor to how much more quickly that will be integrated into your strategic goals and your strategic execution.
Thanks. Yana, I think you have already given us a nice idea of the benefits, but I am especially pleased that you have identified the elephant in the room. The truth is, at my age, I complain frequently that this world is unfair to people my age. Everything I knew, all the competencies I had about everyday life, are changing so quickly, and now I'm in a new world where I don't even know the language for how to describe some of the new technology. It used to be just 2 years ago. It was a big deal for us that we have to be asking our children how to use the features on smartphone. And the smartphone was becoming such a major tool in our lives. But today we are seeing that AI is going to be used in almost every aspect of our organizational life, and people are using it even in their personal lives. So I totally understand.
Sorry, not to cut you. I mean, I understand, but I think, even if aging yourself, even your age group, you are on the cutting edge of technology compared to the generation before you. And, so the same approach to embracing it, I think that the openness that you had to what was emerging, when you were younger, I think once that is maintained, certainly, things will come easy. Once you're not open to learning, the ability to understand becomes that much more difficult, you know?
Understood, understood. But you also mentioned, having that mix of the demographics. And I think that is crucially important for different reasons, of course, not just in helping the older members on the board to be comfortable and to understand the changing environment with the technology, but also because of the perspectives that they bring in
Absolutely.
being able to share different ideas in
Absolutely.
how the organization may grow and develop. So, and how then do we ensure that there's that continuous right mix? So not just mix of skill set, of age group and gender and those kinds of things. Bringing persons to that level where they could serve effectively as directors. That's something that we need to talk about and to help ensure that we can prepare everyone for being able to not just understand but thrive in this
Absolutely.
new world.
Absolutely. I think the approach to mix to me is very much tied to what are the strategic objectives of your organization, one. And two, if at the core of, and I think it is at the core of every business, is that you want to build a business that is resilient. A resilient business is an adaptable business. Adaptability requires that there is a multidisciplinary approach and an openness to embracing the evolution of business to be able to stay current. And coming with that requires that there is knowledge of how things evolve. And, it's just a fact of life that if it is that evolution is happening within your generation, you are more likely to be, more up to date with what is happening, more integrated with understanding the evolution, understanding its use cases, understanding how it can be used by a business. And so having representation, one, across multi-disciplines, because, for example, again, just bringing it back to AI, it is important to have a keen understanding of the technical side of it. You don't have to be an AI expert, and you don't need AI experts on the board, but somebody who has some level of knowledge is going to be very important, because the principles around the deployment of AI are not very far from the principles that undergird enterprise risk management and general corporate governance frameworks. So the same ethical ethos is around fairness, around accountability, around transparency. Those are not new. So it is, once you're acting from that space, and that is what undergirds your framework, and anything that you're deploying has to go through the scrutiny of that framework, then you're in good stead. But it is also important to have the technical understanding as well, to understand the risks, that what exactly it is that you are deploying, you have a full understanding of what that is. So if it is that you're building a resilient organization that's adaptable, and adaptability requires that you're not seen as obsolete because trends have changed, and ways in which operations execute human activity in a more efficient way and through automation and computer learning has changed, it's going to be important that you have people who have their finger on the pulse and are part of the generation within which the change is occurring, because we are more likely to be closer to an understanding of what is happening.
Yes, very good. And so that would help a lot of boards when they're looking at their selection process and nomination of directors. And so, but I want to ask you another question that I think you're probably more properly positioned to address than most people. We do have to look at the issue of the China-US relations. So
Yes.
a lot of persons, when they look at AI, and most of us are familiar with two major tools. ChatGPT or DeepSeek?
Right.
What would you say should guide organizations when they're thinking, so which AI model should I look to utilize more so in helping me?
Well, the first thing is in it very much where the model was developed and where it is being deployed from is very important, because the regulatory landscape, or certainly lack thereof, in the place of origin is going to very much dictate the terms and conditions on which you are able to interface with it. So most generative AI models, or AI models that are being used now, use what they call the large language model, or in terms of what powers it. And in a lot of large language models, you find, and certainly what I found in a lot of even the contracts that we're looking at now in terms of deploying the AI, the default position is that these models, or that these platforms, want to use your information to train their AI. And it's a hard fought battle, I can tell you, I've recently gone through it, to deploy what they call private models, which is that it is not using your AI to train. In the data that you're feeding into it, which of course needs to be anonymized and pre-processed before you put it in, which is a whole other issue, speaking around data governance and the ethics of the usage of data that you're deploying. Where that is not at the heart of the developer in terms of what they're developing and deploying, because they don't have a regulatory imperative to do so, it's going to be very important for you to determine, what AI you choose, what are the threats and the risks that are associated with it, no matter how much data governance and ethics you utilize in terms of, the data you input and how you use the output. And you're right about the broader implications, diplomatic implications, if you want to call it that, of integrating into your business so deeply an AI model or an AI system that is deployed by and coming from a country or an organization that is based in a country that is having serious, diplomatic issues with other entities, that have a hand in certainly the economy that your business operates in and needs to thrive in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We are just 2 minutes away from the completion of this half-hour governance live, Yana, and I can't believe how the time has flown.
It has. It really has. I kept looking at the clock and I'm thinking, wow, when did 5 minutes go?
Yes, yes. So I'm so happy that you're going to be a panelist for us for Governance Week. And I know there's a whole lot that we would be able to invite you to talk about, because this is so important for us to be able to have a way to analyze what is evolving and make the best choice that we can in the moment.
Yes.
Simply because we don't know a month from now how the world is going to change. Because
Absolutely.
certainly it's
Absolutely.
telling us, yes, major, major things are in the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
So we can conclude the governance live this morning by you sharing with us, if you are advising, a board in the region to say, in building that sustainability that you want to see, for like how your organization is 200 years old, what would be those underlying principles you will tell them should guide how they make their decisions, simply because we really don't know how AI is going to evolve. So
Right.
yeah, there's no set playbook you can follow.
Right. So, again, it goes back to, which I think is it can sometimes feel overused, the term, but it is important. Any business that is going to last as long as Wray Nephew, and I know there are companies even older, resilience has to be at the core. Now, what does resilience look like? Resilience looks like any investment decision that is made, and not just, at the base of investment, yes, it's financial, but any investment in your people, any investment in the technology that you're going to deploy, any investment in the culture that you're trying to engender in your organization, it has to be purpose driven. And bringing that closer to AI, it's not just to be on the cutting edge of technology and saying that you've deployed AI in your organization in some way, shape, or form. What is the purpose for which you're making these decisions? What's the purpose for the AI that you've chosen? What's the use case? You know, make decisions that are scalable. Bringing that back to AI, start small again. So you start with limitations on the nature of decisions that you'll use AI as a tool to help you to make. You know, you use, if you're looking at it from a operational use case, will you simply limit it to how your marketing team interprets customer insight data? Will you just deploy it in relation to how your commercial team, your sales team interprets depletions and sales and how that maps against the, you know, the marketing activities that you need to be deploying? So it is making sure that any investment you make in those core pillars of your organization, your people, your finances, that they are purpose-driven. Another part of being resilient is keeping abreast of the regulatory landscape that governs how you operate. We're not operating in the wild, wild west. We're all within countries that have a legal framework and that have a ethical framework, because law and ethics, they come from the same place, but they are two different things. Because just because something is legal, it might not necessarily be seen as best practice and ethical. So underscoring that your overall regulatory and governance framework is adaptive, but it is, and so you're keeping abreast of changes and how the changes impact you, and that the policies and the guidelines that you deploy within your organization are adaptable to be able to quickly change and transition to those changes. And then ultimately, to me, I think resilience is around the robustness of, well, I'll probably bring it back to the robustness of the framework, the core of how you operate, ensuring that your principles are at all times, you know, the principles of accountability, transparency are at the root of that.
Thank you so much, Yana. I love that we end on the note of keeping focus of being a resilient organization. And what does that mean for you in your space? And I like that tie into purpose. Why are you here? And how do you ensure that your purpose is filled? It requires a lot of accountability and a lot of trust. So I love what the discussion today. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning, and I look forward to having you for Governance Week 2025.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time, Kamla. This was great.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Warren, for assisting us with the live stream, Quantrell for managing the room for us. And we will see you guys tomorrow when we return for Governance Live at our regular time, 11:30. Our guest would be Marlon Yard from the Barbados Stock Exchange. Marlon has been a director at CCGI and someone deeply connected with us. So we'd have a lot to talk about. Thank you all and have a wonderful rest of the day. Bye now.
Bye.